Are you wanting to get your Ender 3, Ender 3 Pro, or Ender 3 V2 even quieter? Well, join me today as we replace our hot end fixture with a Fang hot end fixture and using Noctua fans and buck converters. See you guys inside. Hello and welcome to today's video. As I said, we are going to be installing a Fang cooling basically hot end cover that allows for cooling on both sides, where the Ender 3s only cool from one side on your print. So it's going to help with cooling on your print, but we're also installing the Noctua fans to the secondary fan in the hot end. And I've already done it to this hot end. If you're curious about that, go check out this video up above. And it will also be down in the description, a link to that video on replacing the primary hot end fan with a Noctua 12 volt, because these guys are 24 volt. So we're going to install a buck converter on the other fan. We're going to install this guy with both Noctua fans. And basically, that's the task for today, is we're going to make this guy quieter, cool better, and just all around as silent as it can be, at least from the fans. So let's get over to the tools. Let's get started. Right before we head over to the printer, though, one piece of business I want to get out of the way real quick. If you enjoy what you see on the channel, hit that subscribe button, join the crew. We're doing all kinds of cool tinkering projects all the time, so be glad to have you guys around. Make sure you share the channel with anybody you know doing 3D printing, maybe interested in 3D printing, or just technology, because that's what we're talking about here, is making things from basically nothing almost. Also, if you have a question about 3D printing, leave a comment down below. Anything in regard to it, I'll try to get you an answer and we'll get you moving forward. Let's get over to that printer. All right, let's move into the part list here. So as you guys can see, we're going to need needle nose, we're going to need wire cutters, we're going to need some scissors, we're going to need Allen wrenches, a buck converter, the Fang that I 3D printed, and also I need only one additional of these fans, but if you're doing this from scratch, you're going to need two of those fans. This is the Fang that I 3D printed. If you guys will notice, checking out some of my videos coming up here in the future, I've done this conversion on 3 different printers. So I have a teal Fang, which is what you're seeing me do today, a red Fang, and a purple Fang. So first thing we need to do is we are going to take off the existing cover with the old blower fan on it, and for this you'll need an Allen wrench. There's one bolt you've got to undo on the back that will allow this cover to come off. It's kind of just there in the center. And it's pretty easy, just undo it and a little bit of wiggling and wiggle it to the right and it should just pop right off. So now if you've already done this fan replacement, you know exactly what you're doing. If you haven't done this, then this is what we're having to do. If you haven't replaced the main fan, check out the link up above or down in the description as well to the video where I did that and installed the first buck converter and that fan that we're now going to take out of the cover, because we want to keep this fan, this Noctua fan that I've already replaced in. It's already got a buck converter. It's already down the 12 volt. We got to get it out and move it in, because we're going to move it over to the Fang. So moving it over to the Fang, that allows us to do quite a few things. One, we're not going to waste work that I've already done. So I don't want to do that. I want to make sure we get this moved over and converted correctly. So there's just 2 screws usually holding this one in on the Ender 3 V2. If you're doing this on an Ender 3 or Ender 3 Pro, there's usually 4 screws that come out pretty easy with the Allen wrench, and you can just pop that guy right out. So now we've got that guy out. I'm going to cut my wire bundle here to give me some slack on my wires. So that way I don't inadvertently pull a wire out of a coupler or something like that. And then we're going to get the kind of pulled away, and then we're going to cut away the old blower fan. I want the leads exposed because I'm going to put on a connector for a Noctua fan. Now, of course, when you're doing this, make sure the printer is not plugged in at all or power switch on. Just want to not shock yourself. That's just kind of one of those things you want to make sure. So now we've got the old casing cleared away. We're ready to install the Fang. So we're going to put the mounts on. But first, before we do that, we're going to put the fan onto the Fang. So I just used the existing little pull connectors that came with the Noctua fan and pulled it through. And then I trimmed them up afterward to just kind of make it look kind of neat. These just kind of give a good, flexible, it gives that rubber band effect to pull the fan tight into the Fang. So here you can see I'm slipping it into the back of the Fang. Of course, we'll have to do this 4 times. I had a little bit of a hard time, so I took my trimmers and I just kind of cleaned up the holes. That way I could make sure I could easily get the material through and get this guy cleaned up and ready to work. So here we go. We're actually going to get it pulled through right here. Now, if you guys are enjoying this content at all, go ahead and hit that like button. Let me know that you're enjoying this type of videos. If you got any 3D printing questions, leave a comment down below. And of course, if you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button, join the crew. Everybody's precious on this channel. So if you're having a problem or you're interested in seeing me print something or want to know how to print something, definitely let me know. Now, as you can kind of see, I'm having to pull quite a bit to pull these through. But I'll pull all 4 through, and then you got to repeat the process for the blower fan that we're going to add on the top. So there's 8 of these in total that we have to put on and then clean up. But it's really not that hard. Just be careful you don't want to rip it, because that'll just make it harder to get this done. Now, you can use screws. The Noctua fans come with really good screws that you can use for this process, but I just went with the rubber ones because I like how it pulls. I'm not adding in more metal hardware. I'm not adding in a bunch of weight, and these are honestly reusable and I can pitch them. So now we're actually going to get the fan onto the 4. Make sure we have it at the right direction, the right angle. We don't want the fan blowing the wrong way. That's kind of just one of those things we want to make sure we're doing right. So make sure the fan itself is pointing out where the wiring is on the back going into the Fang. So we get those pulled on here. We get that good and tight and flush up against there. Get them pulled to where it's not moving at all. And you can see you got to kind of take each one a little bit at a time so you're getting it pulled through. Because if you try to pull 2 and then try to get that 3rd one, you're going to just bunch them up and have a really bad day. So now I'm just going to clean them up. We'll get the excess popped off here so it looks nice and clean. Don't cut it back too far because you want to make sure you have, one, the ability to grab hold of it and pull it through if you have to take these off, but also just to make sure, you know, that it looks clean, and you don't want to cut too far back in the event your fan will actually fall off, which kind of sucks. Now I'm cleaning out this back end part just to kind of make them look clean and pretty, and not have any rubber anywhere that I don't want to get near a heat source or something like that and cause melting and on your prints. Or a fire. The last thing we want is a fire. So, but the cool thing about the Fang, like I said, you can see how it's kind of got those teeth, and I'm pushing the fan in to the center point where it's going to belong. It's going to put cooling on both sides of the hot end. The Ender 3s and the original CR10s only have cooling on the one side. So this is actually going to make your cooling a little bit better. So Cura settings, you will probably have to make some adjustments. They're going to be trial and error. I can't just give you a magic set that'll fix this, that you can just start using. So it's just a little bit of trial and error. I think I maybe tried 2 times on a calibration cube, and I finally zeroed it in. Now, the Ender 3 and the Ender 3 Pro, the mount that comes with this Fang print works fine. It printed with no issue. It went right on. Great. The Ender 3 V2, I had to do some work. So one thing I did is the bolt at the top no longer will just go in because it was screwing into the back of the old base. So you're going to need to get a T3 nut. And preferably a lock washer if you have one so it doesn't vibrate free over time. And you'll have to probably want to make sure you're checking this just for consistency to make sure it stays tight. But I also had to chip away at the inside of it a little bit, and I used a bigger bolt on the lower part to give it a good fitting and get it straight, because that's one thing that you've got to watch with this is you've got to get the adjustment and you've got to get it straight. You won't want the fangs right at nozzle level. You want them up a little bit, maybe 2 millimeters above where the nozzle is actually hitting the plate, so that you're not dragging material, your fang's not getting caught. And honestly, you don't want your Fang right up against your hot end because the Fang's ABS or PLA or whatever material you use, so that can melt, and that's not going to be a good thing for the Fang either, or your printer, and that's just going to mess up prints, and you're just going to have a bad day if you do this. So, and you can see here I'm kind of snipping away, making an adjustment, trying to get that straight for the V2. Now my Ender 3 that I did went right on. I didn't have to make this little chipping away at the inside to make this fit straight. So it's the carriage on the Ender 3 V2 is a little different. And I'm sure if you go out to Thingiverse, you can find other models that have this little bit of adjustment in there. This model that I had did not, so I just kind of made the adjustment myself, and you can see me here kind of tweaking, toying with it, trying to get it solved so I can get it on there. So, and at this point it looks like I'm actually getting the screwed in and getting it on there. So we're going to tighten up the one side, make sure it sits in flush. We want this piece to be tight. So, because these two bolts are holding the entire fang up. So make sure you get a good seating on here, because that fang comes loose, you're going to have a bad day. So it looks like I'm getting it in place now. I just got to put that top nut in, which you can see I'm coming around to the back of the printer to do. I know my hands are kind of blocking it while I try to push it through, but we're getting the bolt in there. We're getting it kind of cleaned up, and it's still being a little bit of a game to get it in there. Now, guys, this kind of stuff is very common to have to tweak, pull, torque. But remember the basics when you're done with these type of projects. What should you always do anytime you make a major change to your printer, or you move it, or anything like that? The first thing you need to do is make sure you level that bed. Just because it was level before you moved it or before you made an adjustment somewhere doesn't mean it's level now. So an adjustment anywhere on the printer can throw the whole thing off. So, and this printer is one that I do, as you can see on there on to the right, I do have the secondary Z-Rod modification on this printer. So actually I have it on all my Ender 3s now, and let me tell you, it's working great. So we got the fang mount on. Now we're going to move on to the second fan for the blower. So we're going to do the same thing as we did for the first fan. We're going to get it out of its plastic. We're going to put the 4 holders on, and we're going to put it right there on top. So as you can see, I'm going to start pushing that through. I'm going to take the fang back apart so I can get up easier to the 4 holes. But as you can see, I'm just going to push it through. I'm having to clean it up again with my tool. I had a string go across from the initial layer. That kind of made the hole a little too small. So just a little bit of cleanup with your trimmer, and you should start getting those pulled through. And you can see, here they come, right on through. So that is something that you'll run into as you do these print projects. They get, you know, there's little pieces, little bits, but we're going to pull all 4 of those through like we did for the original fan. We're going to get this fan seated on here. And as you can see, here comes the fan. So, and these Noctua fans are really nice. I wish they came in a 24 volt, but they only come in the 12 volt for the sizes that we need. But they are very, very wonderfully quiet. So, and the butt converters, honestly, the butt converters I'm using, a 4-pack is like $15. And you don't even need a voltmeter. It handles it all for you, which is pretty awesome. So we're going to get the fang kind of set aside here. Here I am putting the connector on to the blower fan connection. So when you do this, you have a blue and a yellow wire. So what you need to make sure you get is the blue wire, or the yellow wire will need to go to the black wire. Or no, that's not right. Yellow wire needs to go to red, black needs to go to blue. Is the connection you need to do here. So yellow to red, black to blue. That'll give you your correct connections. And the little connectors that come with the fan do the job very nicely. One thing that you'll see here towards the end is when I'm cleaning this up and I'm bundling all my cables together, I actually found on Amazon the flex material that holds all the cabling from the grommets that holds the cabling. I found a Velcro version that works really well, and I actually enjoy using it quite a bit. You'll see me add that on here at the end. It kind of helps keep things tidy, but if I needed the wires, I just undo the Velcro. I don't have to cut, I don't have to do any of that, and it's completely reusable, which is great. Now, once you cut it, take a lighter and melt the ends together. That kind of helps it keep all its shape and form. It doesn't take much to melt it. Just get the lighter up against it and let it melt. So now we've got our connectors getting on here. We're getting everything trimmed up and getting it ready to go in the connectors. These are really thin wires, so you want a really good pair of wire cutters. That way when you strip the wires, it works really well. Make sure you give them a good twist. We want to get good connections while we push them into here. And then here is the connector. And of course it's itty bitty and my hands are big, so it kind of makes it hard to show this stuff. But they come with the fan, they're clear and yellow. They work really well.
I enjoy them. I've used them on other projects with Ethernet wire and different things like that. For small wires, these connectors work really well. They seal really well, and as you can see, I'm getting it pushed in there and getting this kind of set up nicely. Now, why am I doing a connector instead of just putting my fan directly in line? Well, in all honesty, fans can burn up. You can get the glob and it get in the fan, and it can rip off blades and different things like that that can destroy your fans. So this method lets me just plug and unplug. I don't have to redo wiring. I don't have to cut wires or anything like that. I've made it a plug and play fan now, which is pretty darn awesome and pretty useful for longevity of your printer use. And that connector comes with the fan. So we're not out anything. We actually gain by using these connectors and these time while we get this wired in, because as I said, now I got to do is I just got to plug them in. I plug both fans in, then I push that Fang onto the new holder, and guess what? All we have left to do at this point is we've got to install a buck converter. So if you're starting out from scratch, you haven't done any noctua fans on your printer, you're going to have to do this twice. Your blower motor and your hot end fan. So you're going to have to make sure you have the buck converters in there, because if you put this fan directly into 24 volt current, it's going to run loud and it's going to burn up. And you just don't want your fan to die, because then your printer overheats, then you get a thermal runaway error, you lose your print, potentially could start a fire with your printer, and that's not good. So this is the buck converter I use. Like you can see, it has a digital display on it, has a voltmeter on it. I've already got one on the printer in the orange box there. So that orange box is controlling my hot end fan. Again, that video link on how I did that is down in the description. And then this blue box will be controlling the blower fan. Now, the cool thing is we don't even need to open up the motherboard. We just need to cut the wires at an appropriate point where they're going to fit to come over to the buck converter. This is screw in, no solder. Really kind of nice advantage here. So as you can see, I'm pulling away the grommet on the bottom of the printer away from the motherboard so I can get at the blue and yellow wire. Now, if you're doing the other fan, the hot end fan, you need to move it over out of its plug to the power plug, to a separate power plug that I detail in that video when I did that one. So you can see the grommet's kind of being a little bit of a bear to pull away. There's a couple grommets, and of course I put my arm in the way. You know, that just makes things easier for you to see, right? I can make fun of myself. But there's the blue and yellow wire, and I want to make sure I get enough stretch to go over to that box. So I figure out where I need to cut it. Again, there's no power to the printer right now. I snip it, and these two ends will now connect into the buck converter. So I'm going to cut back a little bit on the sheathing so I can get some extra length of the blue and yellow wire to pull over to the buck converter casing. Now, you know, you don't have to put casings on like this. You can make it your own way. This is just the way I found convenient and the way I chose to do it. This works well in my IKEA stand that you guys will see here in the future. It's still a work in progress at the moment, but we'll get this set back down here. And as you can see, now I got to do is wire it in. Now, buck converter. Make sure your current is flowing the right direction. If it is flowing the wrong direction and you turn this on, it will pop and it will ruin your buck converter. How do I know this? I did it. And it, you know, it's kind of one of those things, oh my gosh, what an idiot thing. So make sure the power coming out of your motherboard is going in, and it's going, you're looking at the arrow on the bottom of the buck converter to make sure your power's going the right way to the fan. So, and at that point, all you got to do is screw them in. As you can see, I'm getting the leads ready to screw in. And once we have the leads ready, we're going to be moving quite a distance here really fast. So this kind of can be infuriating. The blower fan is the harder one to calibrate the voltmeter on. So what I had to do to get the blower fan to stay on long enough for me to drop the voltage on the buck converter was to, what I had to do was actually start a print to where it would turn the blower fan on for me. Then I was able to drop the voltage. So, but as you can see, there's 4 leads. You just got to open them all up and get them all ready. Not a lot of difficulty here. What you got to do, but it does take a few minutes, and then all you got to do is get your 4 wires in, go in the right direction. And yes, my thing, and though here's the important part: we want the power going that way. So from the motherboard, we're going to put it in at the start of the arrow, and the power going out will be at the end of the arrow. That way, you're going the correct path, you're getting the power you need, and you're not ruining a buck converter along the way. Because let me tell you, that's no fun. So, all right, so getting those nice and tight in there, getting them all nice and comfy in their new little homes. So once I have these leads put together, it's a simple move forward. As I said, I had to start a print to actually keep the fan on long enough for me to calibrate the power. Drop in the power, there's just a little screw on there, you turn, and you'll see it either go up or down. Now, of course, it's 24 is all it's coming in, it's not going to go up. But these buck converters are really handy to use, and I value these as a find, because having to sit there with trying to keep gator clips on and read the amount of power and stuff like that was just a total pain. But having these, it made life pretty darn easy, to be honest with you. And actually, there are 2 printers sitting right next to me with the Noctua fans running, and you can't even hear them. Now, my Ender 3 and Ender 3 V2, I've swapped them out completely to Noctuas, just for quietness. It made the printer so much more quiet. I'm still kind of experimenting with the sound dampeners, though. I'm not sure those really help, but one thing at a time, because making these printers as quiet as possible is a blessing in disguise, especially if you have it in your room with you or something like that. Because like me, I won't put it out in the garage. I live in the middle of Missouri. The weather changes up and down. Yesterday it was 70 degrees. Last night it was like 25. It doesn't make sense. So that's really hard and bad on a print unless you've got an enclosure going on, which I'm working on my IKEA enclosure for these 2 Ender 3s. But my CR10s, they're in a climate controlled room where things are great. So you can see I'm getting the power all kind of lined in there, setting that guy back in his home. Here we are starting the print so that I can get that blower fan going. So again, you'll see it come on here. You'll see I've got power to the blower fan. That's exactly what I needed. So now I can take the screwdriver and I can start lowering that voltage. Now, during this time, and I'm sorry there's no audio for this piece, that fan was just buzzing because it was getting too much power. So it was running as fast as it could. Sometimes you got to turn for a little while, figure out the right direction to get that power to get it actually to change the power. And there's a button on this buck converter that will allow you to switch between the power coming in, the power going out. So you can actually see both sides to confirm what your voltage actually is, or if it's dropping it on its own. But I think by default these are set to 24. So it takes a little while, but what will happen is the voltage on that screen will start to drop. We'll get it down to the 11.8 that I like to set them to. That's my personal preference. These are 12 volt fans. So you would think set them at 12 volt, but I've just kind of found a happy medium at 11.8. And there we go. We are set. We are at 11.8. The fan is running. Everything is looking good. Now we're ready to kind of start buttoning up this project. So what I'll do is I'll halt the print. I'm not really printing anything. We'll halt it. We'll get everything kind of cleaned up. We'll make sure all of our wires are cleaned up and together. I'm going to go ahead and auto home, as you can see. Well, actually, I think I canceled the print and it auto homed it that way. I'm going to put my little cover on. The print for these little buck converter boxes are in the description below. They come in handy. Just one bolt and T-nut mounts them right onto the frame. I've kind of had a hard time with keeping them closed, but you saw my solution on the orange one. A rubber band works great. And it makes it easy for me to take it off. So it kind of makes it an easier thing to work with. So now we're kind of coming up to the final parts. I'm going to button everything up. We're going to get everything cleaned up. We're going to clean up this mess of wires around the Fang. So it's always good to kind of keep these organized, cleaned up. You don't want a wire getting into a fan or getting too close to the hot end and melting, and then, oh goodness gracious. Or just melt, short, and dead printer. You don't want to blow your motherboard or anything like this. Now, this is the material I was talking about. It's Velcroed, so you can open and close it, reuse it, and it makes it kind of easier to keep everything cleaned up. If you don't want to use a ton of zip ties to keep this organized, I honestly, the one I bought was a little too small for what I'm doing, but I'm kind of one of those things, I just kind of forced it to work. But anytime I need to get to these wires, I just pull the Velcro open. I mean, that's a huge innovation here. But we'll get this kind of cleaned up here. We'll get this moving. Once this is on there, our wires are all clean. Nothing's going to get snagged and all of that. Then it's time to put your printer back where it belongs, level that bed, and get that first test print going. So my recommendation is do something small like a bed leveling test or a calibration cube, something like that that'll allow you to, one, not waste filament, but also help you zero in your printer and keep it going strong. Because bed leveling, I know a lot of people don't like the bed leveling. The gauge method is my favorite. I'm still kind of figuring out a good way to do that with the Fang, to be honest with you. So I have resorted back to the paper method with these. I'm not a huge fan of auto bed levelers. I've tried them. I've found them to be more of a pain than what they're worth.
All right, guys, that's everything put together. The fans are rolling. It's actually running in the room. You can't even hear it. So I appreciate you guys joining us today. If you got any questions about these hot ends or these fans or anything like that, leave me a comment down below. I'll try to help you out. Also, if you do like what you're seeing on the channel, we're doing all kinds of stuff like this, hit that subscribe button, join the crew. Any questions, comments, I appreciate it. This was a pretty simple project. I did the whole swap out in about 45 minutes. So yeah, the video's cut down. I kept the juicy parts, but we did the total work in a pretty short amount of time. So I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys in the next video.